Good evening. This hearing of the Arizona Independent Redistricting Commission will now come to order. Today is Wednesday, October 12th, and we're in the lovely town of Payson, Arizona tonight. The time is 6:06 p.m., and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, good evening, folks. Thanks all for coming out tonight and providing input at this hearing. The purpose of tonight's gathering and in all the towns that we're going to across Arizona is to obtain input on the draft legislative and congressional district maps that have been drawn. And we look forward to hearing what you have to say and getting that into our record. I want to go around and introduce folks after roll call, and then we'll get started on the presentation and then your public comment. So, Vice Chair Freeman.
Here.
And Vice Chair Herrera, Commissioner McNulty, Commissioner Sturts. The other three commissioners are watching this. They'll be watching it in a recorded version. We're not streaming live tonight, but this meeting is being recorded and it will be posted to our website as soon as possible by our Chief Technology Officer, Buck Forst. But just like last night, I wasn't at last night's first hearing in Phoenix and watched that online, and it's pretty fabulous with technology these days. So I'm sure that they will be watching and listening to your input as well. Let me introduce some other folks at the table here besides Vice Chair Freeman. We have our legal counsel, Mary O'Grady, our mapping consultant, Andrew Dreschler, and Corinne Belach. We have a court reporter taking an accurate transcript of tonight's proceedings. That's Marty Herder. Buck Forst, our Chief Technology Officer. You saw Christina Gomez, our Deputy Executive Director, on your way in. And I believe we have some public outreach coordinators here tonight, Christy Olson and Lisa Schmelling. Thank you all for being here. And please feel free to talk to any of our staff if you have any issues that you'd like addressed or if you need anything during the course of the evening. Federal law requires that we translate these proceedings this evening, and I believe we have a translator, Mr. Carlos Reyes, if he would like to come up and just say a few words.
Good evening, Chief Mathis and Commission. Presidenta Mathis, Vicepresidente Freeman, comisionados, damas y caballeros, de acuerdo a la Ley de los Derechos Electorales, un traductor e intérprete estará disponible en todas las reuniones de audiencia pública a fin de proporcionar la interpretación que pueda ser necesaria para los ciudadanos que necesiten servicios de interpretación o traducción. Si necesita la asistencia de un intérprete, por favor, comuníquese conmigo. ¿Habrá alguien en la sala que necesite la asistencia de un intérprete? I believe we're good, Commissioner. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you translate that to English? I can't, I don't know. He was providing some welcoming comments to the crowd and to see if there are any need for translation services tonight, but he's coming back up and he can tell you exactly what he said in English.
I was told to do it in Spanish, so I do apologize. I do apologize, Commission.
No problem.
Here we go. It says, Chair Mathis, ladies and gentlemen, and commissioners, in accordance with the Voting Rights Act, A translator-interpreter will be available at the public hearings in order to provide translating and interpreting services that might be needed for those citizens that need translating or interpreting services. Please contact the translator-interpreter present at the meeting so that he can assist you. And that is it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. So I think many of you are aware that we have these request to speak forms. They're yellow and they're in the back of the room. So to provide input tonight, if you'd like to come up and address the commission formally, please fill out one of these forms and I'll be calling your name for you to come up and give us your testimony. There are blue forms in the back. If you prefer not to speak at the microphone tonight, you can fill out input on a blue form and provide that, and that will be entered into the record just the same as it would if you stood up and stated it yourself. So two ways to provide input to us tonight, and then you can, of course, do it after this hearing. If you think of something later and want to address us, you can do that via our website, and you'll be hearing more about different ways to provide input in the presentation to come. Let me see if I missed any of the housekeeping items. Right now, I don't think so. So our next item on the agenda is for Mr. Dreschler to provide an introductory presentation for you all about the process.
Thank you very much. Good evening. We're here today to discuss the draft maps presented by the Arizona Independent Redistricting Commission. The draft maps are currently under a 30-day review period, which means this is one of the big reasons that we're here today, is to hear your opinions on the maps. Before we display the maps, we wanted to give a quick overview of the process. Arizona's redistricting process is governed by the state constitution, as amended by the voters in 2000 with the passage of Proposition 106. It stipulates that the Arizona Independent Redistricting Commission redraw the Arizona's congressional and legislative districts to reflect the results of the most recent census. Due to the 2010 census, Arizona gained a congressional seat and will go from 8 seats to 9 seats. The legislative will have 30 districts, 30 senators, and then 2 members in the House, so a total of 60 House members. What are the guidelines of Prop 106? 1A, they must comply with the U.S. Constitution and the Voting Rights Act. B, equal population. Criteria A and B are federally mandated. The other 4, to the extent practical, are from Proposition 106. C is compact and contiguous. D is respect communities of interest. E, use visible geographic features, city, town, and county boundaries, and undivided census tract. F, favor competitive districts where no significant detriment to other goals. A real quick overview of the Voting Rights Act. Arizona's congressional and legislative districts must receive pre-clearance or approval from the Department of Justice or the federal court under Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act before they can take effect. To get pre-clearance, Arizona must demonstrate that the new districts do not discriminate against minority voters in purpose or effect, which means there can be no intentional or accidental discrimination. Under Section 5, Arizona's redistricting plans cannot be retrogressive. The plans cannot weaken or reduce minority voters' rights. The presence of discrimination can be determined by analyzing population data and election results. So there's setting up the commission, there's really 6 steps as part of the timeline. The first thing that we did was establishing a commission. So this is basically creating a new state agency. Commissioners were appointed through a screening process and all serve in a voluntary role. As you know, we have two of the commissioners here tonight. We have the chair, Colleen Mathis, and vice chair, Scott Freeman. Jose Herrera is another vice chair. Linda McNulty and Commissioner Richard Sturts are also not present tonight. The second step is the first round of hearings. Before drawing a single line, the commission held 23 public hearings around the state in July and August to get input from members of the public about issues relevant to redistricting, such as geography, communities of interest, minority voting rights, and competitiveness. The third step is the mapping. We started with the grid map, which was approved on August 18th. The grid map takes into consideration two things: equal population and compactness. And starting with the grid map is the stipulation of Proposition 106. Since adopting the grid maps, the Commission has met more than 25 times to consider adjustments to the grid map to accommodate all state constitution criteria. During this time, they received additional public comments and draft maps. Approval of the draft maps. On October 3rd, the Commission approved the congressional maps that incorporated changes based off of all the constitutional criteria, and then on October 10th, it approved the legislative maps. The fourth step is the second round hearings, which you're part of tonight. Currently, we are in the process of visiting 25 towns and cities to share the draft maps and receive additional public comment during the month of October. Step 5 is the final maps. Upon completion the public comment period, the Commission will adopt final maps. The sixth step is pre-clearance. Because Arizona is subject to Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act, the district maps must be approved by the Federal Department of Justice or a federal court in Washington, D.C. before they can be used for Arizona elections. We want to show the progression of the maps and show how we came to the current draft maps. The map you see here was the congressional map that was approved by the last Redistricting Commission and most recently used in the 2010 elections. Per Proposition 106, we were required to start with a blank slate. Also, as we discussed earlier, the proposition requires us to start with a grid map, which again takes into consideration two things: equal population and compactness. After more than 25 meetings, the Commission voted to approve the draft map you see here. Besides taking into consideration the 6 criteria, the Commission took into consideration public comment provided via public meetings, round 1 in public hearings, comments that were mailed in, emailed, hand-delivered, faxed, people who telephoned, and I'm probably forgetting a couple other methods, but we've heard a lot of different people. Anyway, over 2,000 comments helped develop this map. As you see, some of the highlights on the map are 2 predominantly rural districts, 3 border districts, 2 districts in the city of Tucson, 5 districts that are entirely in Maricopa County. It avoids splitting Arizona's Indian reservations, and 2 districts where minority voters have the opportunity to elect the candidate of their choice. Much like the congressional map process, the legislative maps followed a similar process. Here you see the legislative map that the last Independent Commission approved and was last used for the election in 2010. Again, like the congressional map, we started off with a blank slate before creating the maps. And as like the congressional map, we created a grid map. Again, took into 2 considerations: equal population and compactness. And finally, just days ago, the Commission approved the draft map that you see here. Some of the highlights of this draft map that we'll go through: the old districts that were used in the 2010 elections, the population ranged from 155,000 to 378,000. The current draft map has 207 to roughly 215,000. To comply with the Voting Rights Act, the draft map included 10 districts in which minority voters have the opportunity to elect the candidate of their choice, 1 district with majority Native American voting age population, 3 districts in southern Arizona, 4 districts in Maricopa County that have a majority Hispanic age population, 2 districts in Maricopa County in which the coalition of minority voters should have the opportunity to elect the candidate of their choice. The draft map also includes 3 districts wholly within Pima County and 3 additional southern Arizona districts. There's 17 districts primarily in Maricopa County and 9 districts that are primarily rural. As we stated earlier, we want to hear your opinions, and we want to hear what your thoughts are on these maps. As the chair mentioned, if you want to speak tonight, we ask you to fill out one of the yellow sheets. Otherwise, you can, and examples of the input that we're looking for is any of the constitutional criteria, draft congressional map, comments on the draft legislative map. You can also submit, besides speaking at a hearing, you can fill out one of these blue forms that are available at the hearing or on the website. Or you can visit us at our website at www.azredistricting.org or call us at 602-542-5221 or toll free at 855-REDISTRICT. Here's a screenshot of our homepage, and just want to highlight a couple different things. Where you can find the maps, there's 2 different areas, and recently we just added at the bottom of the page both you can click to see the legislative maps or the congressional maps. Also on this page is meeting information. If you want to go view any of the recordings of past meetings, those are available, and the schedule for all future meetings is also available. And if you have any public comment, you can go to the web page and submit comment through there. Once you click on one of the, to view the draft maps, you're going to come to this screen. And one thing that we wanted to highlight, and people have found this feature really useful, is what is the KMZ Google Maps. If you click on either of these to see we're circled in red, if you click on either of those, you'll come to a screen that looks like this, and it allows you to see the entire state and the specific maps. Over on the left, you will see the opportunity to click off of districts or off of county labels to see more detail or less detail. And one great feature about this is you're able to zoom in and specifically see your area, your boundaries, and as you can see here, you can see the exact streets and locations that make up the boundaries of your district. Again, we want to hear from you, and we want to make sure that you stay connected with the process. You can visit us at our website, www.azredistricting.org. On there, you have the ability to draw your own maps. We have an online mapping program that the public can access and use, watch current or past meetings, and get updates on future meetings. You can follow us at Twitter, at #AIRC, or friend us on Facebook. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dreschler. That was a very informative presentation, and hopefully it helps people kind of orient themselves for tonight's hearing. So just a reminder, we're here to get your input, and for those of you who have filled out request to speak forms, please come up to the microphone and get as close to the microphone as you can and speak your name into the microphone as well as spell it so that our transcript will be accurate. If you could also tell us where you're from, don't tell us your specific address, but just a city, town, or county is fine. That would be great. And the idea is that if you could tell us specifics about what you like or don't like about the maps, that's very helpful, and you can to be as specific as you can in terms of what modifications you think should be made, or again, if you think everything's great, then tell us that too. So we really want to hear as specific an input as we can so that we'll be able to make good decisions later on any modifications or adjustments that need to be made on either of these maps. And I think that's about it. I'm going to ask everyone to try to limit your comments to 4 minutes. Buck will have a timer, and he'll be timing you. And if the buzzer goes off while you're talking, please just feel free to wrap it up as well as you can. You can finish a few sentences or whatever. You don't have to stop instantly, but We're just trying to ensure that everybody has an opportunity to speak tonight. So our first speaker is Larry Stevenson, representing Eastern Arizona Counties organization, which is comprised of Gila, Graham, Greenlee, Apache, and Navajo counties.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the Commission. You have a big job behind you and ahead of you, both. And we appreciate what you've been doing. We've been following some of it. My name is Larry Stevenson, S-T-E-P-H-E-N-S-O-N, for the record. And I'm with the Eastern Arizona Counties organization. And as the chairperson noted, that's comprised of 5 rural counties. Gila, Graham, Greenlee, Apache, and Navajo counties. First, I'd like to speak to the congressional districts, and this will be consistent with earlier comments that have been provided, for example, by Supervisor Tommy Martin or Supervisor Richard Lunt from Greenlee County, so it's not original in that regard, and you've heard some of it before. And following the chairperson's she had the same idea. I laid out my comments in terms of problems, and what I see, and then solutions, the ways to fix what I identify as problems. First, with the congressional district, you split Gila County into 2 congressional districts, 1 and 4, and I don't know if that was just making the numbers work or what, but there seems to be no other justification for this. So we would like to have Gila County kept whole. It's not a lot of people, but it's important. You also made CD1 a so-called border district, but in looking at the map, about the only illegal border crossers there are the 4-legged variety of interest to Arizona Game and Fish Department. There is no official border crossing as with the other border districts. So we think that there looked like, in my opinion, a little bit of gerrymandering there to grab Bisbee and Douglas, but that's just the way the map looked perhaps to me. On your October 1st version of proposed CDs, you really had CD1 just about right. It was rural, mainly, and we appreciated that. All you really had to do then was just maybe tinker with the Gila River Indian Reservation and bring that in to accommodate some interest, and we recognize that. But what happened was that a large portion of urban Pinal County was included instead in the final proposed map. Urban Pinal County is really bedroom suburbs of the Phoenix metropolitan area. All you have to do is look at the traffic on Maricopa Road going outbound to Phoenix in the morning and inbound to Maricopa in the evening to confirm that. And the same with some of the other areas in Pinal County. So there may be a logical reason to split Pinal County into rural, urban, or reservation, non-reservation. But the way you did it for CD1 at present, I think you did an injustice to the good work that you had already done with CD1. As far as CD4, the other rural district, and again, I'm being consistent, we called for 2 rural districts. ECO presented maps showing 2 rural districts, so this is not a new concept. We also had rural district CD4 being rural, and we thought you were, again, having a good start with it on your October 1st version of the map, and we're almost there, and we would like to see that followed through. Okay, those are the problems. The solutions are very simple. Consolidate Gila County and put it in CD1. Go back and keep CD1 rural. There's approximately 1.5 million Arizonans who choose to live in non-metropolitan areas. We know ruralness is not a constitutional requirement, but it's a lifestyle choice by a large number of Arizonans, and we think they should be respected. Similarly, keep CD4 rural. You're almost there. And finally, make CD1 a real border district, not just a token border district the way it is now, in name only. Madam Chair, I realize my time is up, but since I'm representing 5 counties, if I could move on to the legislative districts, I'd appreciate that. Thank you. In the legislative districts, you split Gila County into 3 legislative districts, 6, 7, and 8. What is it about Gila County? Is it the sacrifice county, always to be split, the way you split with the congressional districts? Second, you put Greenlee County in with the Navajo, Hopi, and Apache tribes. They have little or no interaction with those communities to the north. There's, for example, if any, commerce or trade. The only route is a tortuous mountainous route, a couple hours up through the White Mountains. So it's not really connected. I know on the map it is, but it's not really connected. So we see that as a problem. You have also in the legislative district proposal split Graham County in 2 and have not kept Graham and Greenlee counties together. 2 counties which have a lot of similarities in terms of jobs, commerce, similar economics, such as mining and agriculture. These 2 counties have cooperated in the past in county services. They rely on one another, partly because Greenlee County is a much smaller county and was really a spin-off of Graham County years ago. And there's a history of cooperation there. So these 2 counties are probably more intertwined than any 2 in the state, and I would suggest keeping them together. We appreciate what you tried to do with LD7 and make it a predominantly Native American district. But again, do not add little Greenlee County with their less than 10,000 population just to make the numbers work. And as far as Apache County goes, I'm sure you will hear from them when you reach Springerville and Eager. The proposed solutions, Madam Chairman, Commissioner Freeman, are relatively simple. Oh, I missed one problem, I'm sorry. And that's that you have split Navajo County 3 ways. And we would suggest that that's not a logical split. And so we think maybe a 2-way split, but not a 3-way split. So the solutions are to consolidate the non-reservation portions of Graham, Greenlee, and Gila County into a single LD. They have a definite community of interest in with their similar rural and natural resource-based economies, mining, grazing, forestry, agriculture, and so on. Secondly, if you would adjust the boundary for LD6 to drop out the Gila County portion and then to include the remainder of the southern portion of Navajo County. So Navajo County is then split only once, north-south. Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to enter these comments into the record. Okay. And we'll answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you. Any questions? Nope.
Thank you.
I appreciate your suggestions. If you want to, give them to me and we'll give those to the record. Thanks. Our next speaker is Shirley Dye, representing Self from Northern Arizona.
Hello again. Shirley Dye, D-Y-E, from Payson, Arizona. You heard a lot from me over the past week, and I really don't know what else to say, except to say that I think probably the main thing that has caused problems with rural Arizona is that everybody wanted to have 2 rural districts. And based on what the result is, that has really turned out to be a huge problem, because the land mass of rural Arizona, the people are so sparse in so many places, it makes it really difficult and very, very spread out. One problem that you recall that I had with this is trying to put all of the tribes into one congressional district, including even going so far as to go south down to pick up the Gila River tribe, which is down, the big casino down there, southwest of Metro Phoenix, down near Maricopa. You already had a district before that was about 50% Native American, and yet you have packed this district now in trying to be rural. You've packed it up to like 67% or something like that. I don't have all the things. But the main thing is the White Mountain Apaches had respectfully requested not to be with the Navajo. And you had heard from Mr. Titla the other day that the San Carlos Apaches were not decided because they are so split. There are many of us in Gila County and the old LD5 people that have talked to many of the San Carlos Apaches, and they're definitely split. A lot of them do not want to go with the Navajos, and yet you put both of those tribes in that district. To me, if we would go back to one rural district and one river district and not try to make the river districts and something else, I just don't know. We're not happy with this map here in northeastern Arizona, okay? As far as the legislative district map goes, I suppose Payson should be happy in that for legislative, or for congressional district, they're with Flagstaff, although we have no communities of interest with them. And for the congressional district, we're with Prescott, Yavapai, Bullhead City, Lake Havasu, and all of that, which we don't have any communities of interest with, and yet you split us so that we're going to be voting for a congressman in one totally different congressional district, and then having a different legislative district than all of our buddies that we have common interest with, and whose topics of interest of the people that should be representing them are going to be totally skewed. How is a person from Bullhead City or Lake Havasu supposed to represent the high country of Payson when the high country of Yavapai is totally different kind of high country? Or how is a Native American representative going to represent the kinds of communities of interest of rural Arizona? And you know, my thing about our resources, we have been working very, very, very hard to get mining back in rural Arizona, to get cattle back in rural Arizona, because there's proof positive that they help the soil, they help the forests, to work on the Forest Restoration Initiative, which we tried so hard for years and years, and the environmentalists have thwarted us, and that's why we had the huge big wallow fire, is because we've been working for years and years on that. And now, if we have, as I said before, dear old Raul Grijalva from down in the Tucson area, who used to serve and thwart us on the congressional natural resources, and when he was finally in 2010 taken off of the head of that, we've finally been able to make progress, and now he's got somebody that's all lined up to be a congressman for this district to fight us on everything that we've accomplished over the years. And to me, that sucks.
Thank you. Our next speaker is George DeMack, representing Self from Gila County.
Because, yeah, good evening all. Because of an inability of the commission to provide proper maps and instructions on how to use the maps, I am not prepared to make an argument this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to spell your name for the record, though? Just.
D-E-M-A-C-K.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Elizabeth Ann Silcock from Payson.
My name is Elizabeth Ann Silcock. I live in Payson, Arizona. And I don't represent a group. I represent myself as a voter and hopefully speak for some of the other voters that aren't speaking tonight. Madam Chairman and the Commission, we appreciate your letting us finally have a voice. I wrote down just a small little comment because I knew that other people here would probably comment on what I wanted to talk about. Plus, I think that the Commission has not gotten the rural redistricting correct. We don't want to be split up. We don't want to lose our congressman. We don't want to have the Indian tribes that we love be divided because they are, and they'll be more divided by you grouping them all together. Another thing is that our main thing in rural Arizona, which has no connection with Flagstaff or Yavapai County, is ranching, timber, and mining, which provides us a good tax base. And as far as I'm concerned, I might be off base saying this, but it looks like we've been gerrymandered so that the Republicans are cut out. And I do not like that. I've lived here over 30 years now, and I think that we have more of a insight, the people that live here in this county, than you do, because I don't know, do you all live here in this county? Probably Tucson and Phoenix. So anyway, I hope that all of you have abided by the open meeting law and not done anything that is going to cause a lawsuit or the Justice Department not to accept your map. I personally like option 1, 8A, not the one you put together that cut us all apart.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Don Ascoli, representing Self from Gila.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, Commissioners. Don Ascoli, A-S-C-O-L-I, from Payson, Arizona. I've been before your group before, and I got to again point out on the presentation the gentleman gave at the beginning, slide number 3. What are the guidelines of Prop 106? First two, A, must comply with the U.S. Constitution, Voting Rights Act, and B, equal population. And those are federally mandated, as you note. And to the extent practical, compact and contiguous. D, respect community of interest. E, use visible geographical features, city, town, county boundaries, and undivided census tracts. And I don't know where you don't get it. It says it right here. That's what you need to do. And I wish your technical officer had the ability to take the old boundaries, take the boundaries of Rural Metro Equity Map Mod 3, which was drawn to achieve 2 minority districts, 2 real rural CD districts, and 3 real rural, or I should border districts on the south of our state. Instead, you move that around, this is one of the proposals, to what we've got now, this map, and if we could morph the 2 boundaries, you would see that this has gone the wrong way. I don't know what Payson and Gila County has to do with Lake Havasu City, Parker, or Yuma. It just has nothing to do with those parts. We have been a solid rural district for 10 years. The counties up here are working more together than they ever have. The first speaker representing 5 of those counties brought that to your attention. And yet you seem to negate that and go twist the boundaries to where it's meeting some other agenda than being contiguous, community of interest, and not splitting up the counties. Now, I'm not representing any organization per se, but one of my functions I serve on is the chairman of the Gila County Planning and Zoning Commission. We work very hard to keep this county do things together as a county. Yeah, we have differences. I think there's differences in Maricopa County, and there's differences in Coconino, but we are a county, and we govern that way. Yet this map for the CD splits our county up. And unfortunately, when you go to the legislative district side, the travesty is worse, because you split Gila County into 3 pieces. We are a small county. And when you split it into 3 pieces like you have on this map you're presenting, we're going to have 3 different groups of legislatures, of which Gila County is going to be a little bitty part of their district. What clout, what kind of representation can we have as a county when we got 3 different arms to go after, or 3 different heads? It's wrong. You violated the very rules that you said, compact and contiguous, respect communities of interest, and use visible geographic features, city, town, and county boundaries. You violated them all, your own rules. When I went and took a look at the analysis, the option 1 versus 2 that you were considering on the legislative map, and I'm going to repeat this for the benefit of the folks here, because you've already heard me say this last Thursday. In the option you've chosen, you've taken 12 counties, 12 rural out of 15 counties, and split up 8 of them. Where if you would gone with option 1, which has the favor of the majority of people in the rural counties, only 5 of the 12 rural districts would have been split. So what you've done is you took Cochise County and split it from 1, and instead of being in 1 LA district, it's in 2. You took Gila County, which was in 1 district, and put it in 3. You took Graham County, which was in 1, and took it into 2. You took La Paz, split it, and put it in 2. You took Yuma and split it in 2. So we got now 8 counties with different heads. It's like a company. A company works when you have 1 CEO. A county works better when it can direct its effort and its energies with a legislative group, a team of a senator, and 2 state reps. Splitting us into 3, you've made our task 3 times more difficult by doing that. So I respectfully request you go back and get it right. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Robert Hirschberger, representing Self from Payson.
Good evening. My name is Robert Hirschberger, spelled H-E-R. Robert Hirschberger, spelled H-E-R-S-H-B-E-R-G-E-R. I just wanted to take a moment to thank you all as volunteers for the arduous work that you've been doing. We appreciate your spending the time and energy that you have, and we appreciate that you're listening to people's comments. I do think there is some community of interest in 4 when you put Payson, a retirement community and a resort community together with Prescott and with Sedona and even with places like Bullhead City and the like. So there isn't a total lack of community of interest there, though I respect what people have said in terms of keeping Hilo County together too. I might say that the way this map is drawn for the congressional district, it almost assures that no Democrat will be elected to any congressional office in District 4.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Paul Labonte from Payson.
This is my first. My name is Paul Labonte, L-A capital B-O-N-T-E, Labonte. This is my first time attending a meeting like this here, and I'm very disappointed in everybody here. First of all, you show all these pictures of these maps up on there. They all got numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You hand me this paper, and you look at it and say, okay, we're going to October the 1st map. I'm looking all over for October the 1st map. I cannot find where it says October the 1st on any of them. I can't find where it says AA1 on any of these maps so I can follow along here. I can't find anything, so all I'm going to do is sit there and listen, not sure of what areas you're talking about on these maps. And I think when I finally did find the correct map that I'm supposed to be looking at, it looks like somebody took an egg, threw it up against the map, and said, that's what we want, because it's all chopped up. You don't split counties. Nobody splits counties unless they belong in a nut house, if you pardon the expression. That's all I got to say. The maps stink.
Thank you.
There's a lot of us back here. We're not following you because we're too busy looking around trying to figure out what map are you talking about. This is garbage. You should have just left them alone, you know.
Thank you. That was my last request to speak for him. I'm not sure if there are others that I've missed. If anyone else had some public comment for us. Yeah. If anyone would like to speak to us, please come up to the mic, and then it will definitely go into the record. Otherwise, I don't know, Commissioner Freeman, do you have anything you'd like to say?
Thanks to you all for coming out. Yes, I am from Phoenix. My folks had a cabin up in Pine Top when I was growing up. I've been through Payson a lot of times. This is the route you go. No offense to Globe, but we would never go that way. I remember when there was the old Tasty Freeze on the main drag there. I never know what happened to it, but we always used to stop there. And it is? Okay, it's the Dairy Queen. I'll hit it on the way back. Not as much as you, sir. No question. But I do like to get up in the White Mountains, and I hunt and fish. And if you could let me talk now, sir, I just want to say thank you for coming out. The maps that the commission approved are draft maps, and it was made very clear by a number of commissioners that they were drafts, and that I agree that there needs to be changes to these maps. And one of the points of the public comment period is to go get comments like you've given us tonight, and it's incumbent upon the commission and all the commissioners to consider each and every comment, and to go back, when we go back to the final redraft, and spend some time incorporating those comments and applying the 6 constitutional criteria before we vote on final maps. So I'm going to try to make it. I'm not going to be able to make it to all the hearings. I don't think any of the commissioners are, but I'm trying to make it to as many of them as possible, because it's really good to meet everyone in person, in the flesh, so to speak, and not just watch it on the internet. But I know that I'm going to have to do that for some of these hearings to really get a flavor of what people think about the maps. So thanks again for coming out tonight.
Thank you. It looks like if other people, if you'd like to speak, if you want to come up to the microphone, I know you filled out a request to speak form earlier, but please come up and then we can all hear you.
Elizabeth Ann Socock, I just wanted to make a statement. I'm the one that asked the interpreter to interpret that in English, because I looked around and I didn't see anybody Hispanic in the group. and I was shushed, and I didn't appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, sir? If you could fill that out for us, that'd be great.
My name is Morgan Wilkes, W-I-L-K-E-S. I also live in Payson. My grandmother's been here since 1975. I am happy finally to see okay, I'll try. I'll try to speak a little bit louder. I am happy to finally see our three towns finally getting back together. And from what I've seen on this map, it's trying to split us apart again. I do appreciate what you guys are trying to do, but please listen to us. We're just now getting Strawberry, Payson, and Pine back together. And we need to keep that going. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, George DeMack here. It would be vastly appreciated if, in producing these maps, if it was maybe stipulated somewhere on the home page or the commission's website that how to use the maps that are there. I went for a whole week looking at postage stamp size maps, and finally had to be told by a member of the Tea Party that you had to click on these maps and then you could enlarge them in that manner. There were no instructions on any of the pages about this. It's a very simple thing, isn't it? And maybe a bunch of confusing designators for the maps. How about putting a date along with each map, each designator? And the other thing is, looking at these maps on this page here, I see a gray blue and a purplish blue. I don't know what that difference, what it's trying to describe to me, that vague difference there. Also, it would be nice, we've got Gila County, I guess, but is it too difficult to maybe put Highway 87 through there so we can orient ourselves from that? A few more highways would help. I know, I live in Geizela, and that's the sticks. I mean, there's only 500 of us and no commercial entities there at all. But, you know, and I drive 20 miles each way to come to meetings like this. Well, let's use a little imagination rather than just seeing what we can get by without telling the public about. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, thanks. I have a couple more requests to speak forms. Bill Rohr from Gila. Thank you.
I think my problems are, do I need to introduce myself again? Bill Rohr, R-O-E-H-R is the last name. I think what I'm upset about is about what a lot of others are on the maps. I can't find things. You know, Payson isn't even on the map. We think we're on the map, but you folks don't notice this here. And with Highway 87 drawn and nothing in the way of rivers, where are these natural boundaries? There's no way from these maps that we can tell really what's going on in any detail. Can we do that on the computer, or can we blow it up and find all the features so we can actually see what's there? I don't know. Anyway, make it a little easier. Another thing that's hard for us to follow, I'm sure you've used the ratio of Democrats to Republicans, and you've played with minority groups and so on, but where's the data? You've got some percentage. I don't understand these charts. How can we figure that? Can you walk us through some of these? tell us why this is here and what does it mean? I know you're trying to get equal population. Hopefully, it's not being skewed to favor one party or the other in the district. But I'm sure in some cases it isn't going to come out equal. It'd be impossible with all the criteria you've got to go about. So I'd like a little more in-depth information on this, if you will. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me go to the next. Jennifer Labonte from Payson.
My name is Jennifer Labonte, L-A, capital B as in boy, O-N, T as in Tom, E as in Edward. I would like to ask you one question. In what ways does your draft map comply with the Arizona Constitution? That's all. Would you answer that? Please.
Thank you. We can't answer directly right now, but at the end, once everyone's spoken, we'll say a few more words about all that.
Okay.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kay Cool, representing Self from Payson.
I want to thank you for coming to Payson. I think we've got a pretty good turnout tonight. But one of the things that I'm finding difficult is that a number of people didn't sign up to speak, and so as a Payson resident and a resident of Gila County, I would really like to know if the group of people who are here support your draft congressional and draft legislative maps. And I would like to ask you for a show of hands of the audience so all of us have some idea whether the people who have made the effort to attend and communicate with you support what you have put together, which from my perspective is really very confusing in terms of being contiguous and in terms of just representing what I have always found to be the type of geographic or boundaries that the public understands. So I'd like to have a show of hands of how many people do not support the maps, but first the congressional map. How many people do not support the congressional map? I'm not necessarily want to count them, but I would like you to know. How many people do not support the legislative map? Virtually everyone. Thank you very much, because I really wanted to...
Thank you. Our next speaker is Janet Williams, representing Self from Payson.
Hello, my name's Janet Williams. My name's Janet Williams, representing myself. I'm not clear on what competitiveness means. Can that be clarified?
We will be on. We'll talk.
Pardon?
We're not supposed to address comments until the very end of the public comment period, so we'll talk about that in a minute when you're done.
So in looking at Congressional District 4, I was wondering how you, by making that the new congressional district, if you considered tax base, like property tax base, income levels as far as employment goes. I see that it goes all the way up to the Indian Reservation in the northwestern part of the state and all the way down practically to the border on the southwest part of the state. Lifestyles in Lake Havasu City, also the Indian reservations, are not equal, or I don't know if you want to, equal is the right word, but mesh with the lifestyle that we have here in Payson and surrounding areas. Let's see, lifestyle, the same thing. There's a huge mix of lifestyle, income, property tax, employment in this whole congressional district that's not going to be able to be equally represented. On the number 4 on your PowerPoint, it says the presence of discrimination can be determined by analyzing population data and election results. It appears to me the way that this map is redistricting is discriminatory to working people and property taxes, people that pay property taxes, because we are now going to be included in a huge base of people that are not going to be equal or the same as what would represent our district as it is drawn up now in our legislative district. That's it. And I also don't understand compactness. So if you can explain those two things.
Great, thank you, we will. I've asked Mr. Dreschler to pull up the presentation again, because I think it would be helpful for Commissioner Freeman and I to just talk to you a little bit about these different criteria and how this map that you see tonight came to be. And if you could go back to the page that has the criteria listed. Thank you. So, as you can see, we've carved up the state in a way that obviously you're not happy with in Gila County and some of the other counties. And let me tell you a little bit about that process as to how it happened. We have to comply with the U.S. Constitution and the Voting Rights Act. That's just a fact of life here in Arizona, that we need to comply with that. And we'll talk about what that means. In fact, our legal counsel is very well versed in the Voting Rights Act and can explain that in a very cogent way, better than I can do it. The other federally mandated criteria is equal population. So that means for the congressional side, we have 9 districts because we got a new one this year due to population growth in the state. So we used to have 8, we have 9 now. Each of those 9 districts has to have 710,000 people in it. They just take the total population of Arizona and divide by 9, and it's 710,000. So one of the things we heard in our first round of public hearings is how people in rural counties would like to keep them rural. And you guys have different needs and need special representation, that people who really understand your needs, and to the extent possible, we wanted to create 2 rural districts. And that has been proved to be very challenging, because what it does is when you go try to find 710,000 people to fill a district in a rural area, you got to go really far and wide to be able to do that. And so it really flies in the face of compact and contiguous, because it's such a broad area you have to cover to find 710,000 rural people. And all the commissioners, we were challenged in a huge way, because we wanted to keep districts, a couple districts, as rural as possible, and that Eastern Counties organization map was a big inspiration for us and what we wanted to try to do. but it really proved difficult in trying to find 710,000 people without going into places like Pinal County or Maricopa and touching some of that to pull population so that we could get enough people into the district, because we've got to have each of the 9 districts have that number, 710,000. So that's why one of those, I mean, well, 2 of them really are the river district, as we call it, and then the rural district in the east they're giant areas, and we realize that, and so they're not compact. They may be contiguous, but they're not compact, that's for sure. And so that's been a big challenge for us, and so if there are ways we can do that better, where we can keep those 2 areas as rural as possible, but still meet that population requirement, we would. Respect communities of interest. That's something that's very important to all of us. And let me just also say about all these criteria before I go into communities of interest. Each of these criteria is to be weighed equally. No, even though they're in an order up here, it doesn't mean that compact and contiguous is more important than competitiveness or anything else on the list. They're all to be weighed equally by the commissioners in terms of when they're drawing these districts. So respect communities of interest, and we heard a lot in our public hearings in the first round about communities of interest, and ruralness, for instance, is one of them. That's a major one here. We know, though, that in creating districts of 710,000 people, we can't have homogeneous districts. We're trying to the extent possible, but it's really impossible with balancing all these other criteria. So what we're trying not to do is split communities of interest. That would be that, and that's what we don't want to do, is split them. We will have multiple communities of interest, though, in one district. There's no way to have a homogeneous one. Maybe in Central Phoenix you can do that because the population's so dense and it's urban. But otherwise, it's very difficult to do. So what we're trying to do is not divide communities of interest to the extent practicable, but each congressional district, and in some cases some of the legislative districts, contain multiple communities of interest that are all part of it. We're supposed to use visible geographic features, city, town, and county boundaries, and undivided census tracts to the extent practicable. That's another thing that kind of flies in the face of some of the other criteria, because sometimes when you're respecting communities of interest, and I can give you an example if you know Southern Arizona at all, there's right outside of Pima County, there's a retirement community called Saddlebrook, and it's a little bump on the map that some of the maps you'll see. It's in Pinal County, but it views itself as being tied with other communities of interest in that golfing community of Marana and Oro Valley. And so those 3 communities would like to stay together, and they're very similar types of population that would benefit from common representation. And so they're in Pinal County, they're not in Pima County. So to keep those communities of interest together, we have to cross a county line. And so oftentimes we are breaking county lines, and that happens many times with the Indian reservations as well, and in other situations too. So it's just to kind of give you an example of the way these criteria kind of compete with each other. It's quite a puzzle and a challenge to try to bring them all together, but we need to weigh them all equally. Finally, competitive districts, and Ms. Williams, I think, asked about that. And you'll see in your packet some charts that have a lot of information in them, and competitiveness is one of them. And I think each of the commissioners, frankly, has different definitions of competitiveness. It's kind of in the eye of the beholder. To me, competitiveness means that there's no inherent built-in advantage of either Republicans or Democrats in a given party. So it's like a 50-50 split, and on election day, a candidate from either major party has an equal shot of winning based on a number of things. Prior election turnouts, and prior election results, I should say. And also, some people look at voter registration. How many percent R's, D's, and I's do you have in a given district? There are numerous ways to measure it, and And the commission has at its fingertips now the results from the 08 and 10 elections, 2008 and 2010 elections. And different indices have been created to help us measure competitiveness based on those election years. We're in the process this month of getting 04 and 06 data, 2004, 2006 data, as well, so that we can add to our database and look back even further and see, you know, how do those numbers and how do those election results impact the competitiveness of some of these districts we've drawn. And that'll help us determine if we think a district is fairly divided or not. And so we're still, you know, measuring that, and you'll see on in your packet, it's called Commission Approved Congressional Draft Map Compactness and Competitiveness Measures. There are 3 compactness measures listed first, and then the rest of them are all competitiveness, and also show you voter registration data for each of the districts as they're currently drawn. On compactness, these 3 different measures, apparently there are hundreds. I think I've heard our mapping consultant, Mr. Strasma, tell us there are numerous ways to measure compactness. These are 3 different ways to measure them currently, and it's really just information to help us try to make good decisions. And if anybody has anything they'd like to add to this discussion, you'd be welcome to. Anything on the Voting Rights Act, Mary, that you'd like to tell people about so they understand Voting Rights Act a little more?
Well, as I said in the presentation, we're covered by Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act, so we have some special responsibilities in Arizona regarding compliance with the Voting Rights Act. And we have to make sure that these plans don't have retrogression, which means that the minority voters aren't any worse off when we're done than they were before. And to make that analysis, we have to look at what they call our benchmark districts. So we look at our current legislative districts and see where minority voters had an opportunity to elect candidates of their choice. And then when we redraw the lines, we have to make sure that we maintain those benchmark districts if at all possible. And in Arizona, the challenge in rural Arizona is traditionally Arizona has had one Native American district in northeastern Arizona on our legislative districts. That includes mostly the Navajo Nation. And in maintaining that Native American voting rights district, this draft map expands that area to include the Apache reservations as well, which I think was one of the things mentioned in terms of what impact that has on eastern Arizona. But the reason for that was to maintain that as is our responsibility under the Voting Rights Act as an effective voting rights district. Right now, the current legislative District 2, that is the Native American voting rights district, has about 59% Native American voting age population. So we needed to construct a district that maintained that level of voting strength. And frankly, we had not yet developed a way to do that without including the Apache tribes in that district. And we did hear from the San Carlos Apache this week that they were supportive of that change being included with the Navajo. We haven't heard anything further specific on this draft from the White Mountain Apache, but we're hopeful in public comment we will get that information as well. But the Commission has had to spend a lot of time studying how to make sure that we do comply with the Voting Rights Act when also factoring in all those other factors that the chair discussed. That we have to comply with. Also, on congressional districts, we have to get right on the number in terms of equal population. And so sometimes that's difficult as well, because you have to make sure that we are precisely 710,000 within a person or so. And so sometimes you might see some funny looking lines, but they are to obtain that sort of population equality that we're required to do so. And these are draft maps. again, as part of our process, getting input and then coming back and considering all that, plus the additional analysis and coming up with final maps that hopefully will be approved and legal so that, that we have lines that comply with all legal requirements come 2012.
Thank you, Mary. I was just seeing if we have internet in the room just to go to our website, but I don't think we do. I don't think we have access. You do? It'd be great to just show the map. Would it help to pull it up on yours just to show, like to drill down or not? Show our Gila County.
Yeah. I was just going to show the website. What do you want?
We could even show Gila County, I mean, just to drill down so that people, to show them how you can get to street level. Sorry. Feel free.
Hi, Elizabeth Ann Silcock again. I mentioned in my talk option 1, 8A. Now, common sense tells me that when you have option 2 up there, that you've already made up your minds about it. And I would like to see option 1, 8A, and I would like to know when I know you said October the 3rd. Was it changed at the meeting or was it changed before the meeting? And if it was changed before the meeting or put together over the weekend from Friday, were any of the open meeting laws violated? And I think all of you know that Arizona gets sued by the Justice Department every time we have to redistrict. I know you have legal counsel here. Is our redistricting going to be written so that we don't get sued and the taxpayers have to pay to sue ourselves?
So if we want to just look at the website, so this is azredistricting.org. If we go down to the bottom, you'll see two different maps, the legislative and the congressional map. If you click on either, it'll bring you to this page. And there's a number of different formats. Individuals around the state have asked for a number of different formats. The one that we highlighted in the presentation was the Google map. Clicking on that, it'll bring up a Google map. And what this allows you to do is move in, and we can zoom in right here on Payson. And you can see Payson sort of in the center here, and it shows the districts, the district lines. It'll allow you to zoom out to see what is part of the district and what is not part of the district. And you can see, basically go into other parts of the state. Over here, you can turn off the other districts. We're in District 6 on the draft map. So you have the ability to turn off all the other colors just to see it a little bit clearer. That's not what I wanted. Sorry. If you go down to the bottom part, you can turn off the colors so you can see just your district and a little bit more clear. So you see here, so this is the one of the ways that you can go in and see your map. And somebody, as in the front row here, wanted to see the other maps, and somebody was asking where these other maps are. Throughout the process, if you go up to maps, there was a number of what-if scenarios that were drawn. If you go into the what if, you will see all the maps that were considered as part of the process, including option 8A, I believe. Okay. So that's just a quick overview of how you can get to the maps and weigh in. Just want to point out if I am not, but if you go onto the website and want to look at this and afterwards go to the public input form, you're able to give your comments, and that would be part of the consideration and deliberation of what changes are going to be made for the final maps.
Excuse me. Regarding the public input form, a number of us up here, people have been talking to me. When you get down to the bottom of the CAPTCHA, and it's real clear, and you write down the CAPTCHA, and you hit submit, it keeps coming back with another CAPTCHA, and it kept saying, bad CAPTCHA, bad CAPTCHA, bad CAPTCHA, and finally you get up and you walk away and it never sends. Yeah. How many of you tried doing that and it wouldn't work? So there's a lot of lost public comment that you would have gotten.
Security code we're talking about.
Yes.
Right at the bottom.
It keeps coming up saying invalid capture.
Huh. Any ideas on what might cause that, Bob?
Good. Okay.
Then you have to type the whole thing all over again. No way to save it.
We're sorry that that there was an error, but it seems to be working now. And again, the number is here on the website. If you do have problems, feel free to call us. Up on top, you will see the toll-free number as well, 855-REDISTRICT, 855-REDISTRICT. And if you have any problems with the website, feel free to give us a call and alert us of that. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Please come up.
My name is Paul Labani again. Let me see if I understand this, because I really don't. On each one of these different colors, you want 710,000 people?
Sorry, on the legislative one, it's 213,000.
I don't know what I'm showing you here because, like I said, I don't understand these maps because you don't
The
mark
title's
them
right
for
on,
you to read. You mark them for
the,
somebody else.
the title's on top of the page, so it's either the congressional or the
Yeah,
legislative.
that's why I say, why don't you number them? Then you can tell me, go to map number 5, and I can turn to map number 5 on the paper, and I will know which map you're talking about. You know, sure, you guys know. You work with them every day, you know. So I don't. I'm looking at this map because I can't figure out which map you're talking about. You know, so I mean, to me, it's a waste of day. I should have stayed home and kicked my dogs around a little bit. But if you're saying that each county or so is supposed to have that many people in it, now I'm going to say according to this because I've been looking at it, Scottsdale got more than 710,000 people in it, and you got Gilda County here split into three or four different stations. My God, I don't think any of them. I can't see where any of them's got the amount that you want. You know, like I said before, I think you threw an egg at the wall of a Arizona map and said that was it because I can't see any rhyme and reason to your map on this particular one. You know, but I can't read these maps because if you would have numbered them for me, I could follow along. You have them numbered on the screen. You could have put them up on the screen for us to see as you're talking about each one, but nobody thought of that. May I ask how many of you people live in the rural areas, or are you all from Phoenix and Scottsdale? I'm going to presume you're all from the city. So you don't know the problems we have up here, and you're trying to tell us how to live and what we should do. You're wrong. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have anything you want to add, Mary? Okay. Anything else from anyone? Okay, well, we really appreciate all of you taking time out of your evenings to come and talk to us tonight, and look forward to, I hope you'll continue to participate in the process and follow us, and you can watch other venues too, other cities across the state too, on their hearings, because those are also going to be online, recorded, so that anyone can watch any hearing that they want to see. And I'm sorry, Mr. Ascoli?
Madam Chairman, I think, Donna Scully, I think there was one of the question. I think a question came up, where is it the constitutionality behind the grid map? I believe was the question. Where in the Constitution you use that?
The
question right? Right. Is that right?
Oh, the grid map.
Answer on that one.
That's how we, the grid map, the question is what happened to the grid map? And I don't know if that's in the presentation still or not, but that's how we started the whole process. Arizona's through Proposition 106. The requirement is that, unfortunately, we can't just tweak the districts as they currently reside. We have to start from a clean slate. And so a grid map is what it's called, needs to be created that has equal population in each of the 9 districts and created in a grid-like pattern across the state. So it's almost like putting a tic-tac-toe board across the state onto the map and making sure that there's equal population in each of those 9 cells. And that's how we started the process. And did you show the grid map as part of your presentation?
Yes, it's in the presentation, and this is the grid map pulled up.
So the grid map got generated, and it was in the presentation that Andrew gave. And from there, we adjust the boundaries according to the 6 constitutional criteria that we're following. So trying to see if that'll come up. It won't, okay. If you can pull it up on your presentation. Just to show them what the grid map looked like. Oh yeah, it is a different computer. So here's what the congressional grid map looked like. You can see it started down, and we flipped a coin actually to determine where to start in the state so that there'd be no bias in terms of, you know, starting in a certain area that would impact the grid a certain way. So we flipped a coin, it came out that we'd start down there in Cochise, and you can see the 1, 2, 3, and it went in a clockwise fashion around the state to create the 9 districts. And that's all the grid map does, though, is it meets the equal population requirement. It's not adjusted at all to meet any of the other criteria that we have to follow. So it's just the starting point for the whole process. And
Can you bring up option 1 and show us?
can you do that, or? Sure, we can.
Good. I'd like the group to see it.
And again, all of these options, again, all of these options and all these maps are on the website. And here's I'm sorry, you want grid map option 1 or?
Option 1, 8A.
Okay.
And if it's helpful while he pulls that up, the legal concern about that was the benchmark issue with the Native American district, because it didn't reach the benchmark. And that was the legal problem there.
Benchmark of what?
For the Native American districts, getting up to 59% Native American population, it was at 52%. And so the concern was whether it would have a retrogressive effect on the Native American district and whether it would cause us not to get pre-clearance. That's the legal issue of concern.
If you have comments, please come up to the microphone and identify yourself so that our court reporter can get an accurate transcript. Thank you.
Shirley Dye, Payson. The maps that they're talking about is, this is option 1, version 8A. This is option 2, version 8A. At the beginning of last week, they decided they were going to merge these 2 versions. This one was prepared by Mr. Freeman, the Republican, and this one was prepared by Mrs. McNulty, the Democrat, on the team. And then so they decided to merge them together. They already had on 8A, for option 1, the statistic for number 7, District 7, was 52.05% Native American. So they already had a minority-majority district there that they could add to all of their other ones, and still have the 9 that they were looking for. But they decided they would steal these people down here and pack it in. That's my thoughts anyhow.
Okay, Ms. Williams?
My name's Janet Williams. My question is, if in Congressional District 4, if we now have 59% Native American representation, is that correct? Is that what you just said?
Go ahead, Mary.
The legislative district configuration, not for the congressional
Okay.
district configuration.
What do we have for congressional?
Congressional, we don't currently have a majority Native American district. Our voting rights districts on the congressional side, there's only one in urban Maricopa County, and then there's one in southern and southeastern Arizona. So there's not a voting rights district per se, majority minority district in northeastern Arizona or eastern Arizona.
Okay. But still the question remains then, even in a legislative district, the percentage of people that would be filing federal income taxes, paying property taxes, employment, and how we could be fairly represented legislatively or congressionally, because the percentages would be skewed as far as representation goes. That's just my comment.
Thank you. Okay, is there anyone else who'd like to say anything? Shirley, Ms. Dye.
Shirley Dye Payson. To follow up on what Janet just said, the people in Flagstaff, the conservative people in Flagstaff, are having a huge problem. They did not want to be with the Native Americans like they were before, because the Native Americans decided they wanted their own health care clinic, because the ones in Flagstaff, I guess, weren't good enough for them. And so their legislator decided, without telling Flagstaff, that they were just going to get their own health care clinic. And so they raised all of Flagstaff's taxes 16% to get that, and just did it. And this is what everybody else in the legislative district as it is now, is because, and I want you to know, again I say, I am not a prejudiced person. We've worked with the Tonto Apache tribe here and the San Carlos tribe and the White Mountain tribe. We have 3 tribes in our current legislative district and in our county. And if we pick up that other thing, we'll have the Camp Verde Apaches too. We do not mind having Native Americans in our district, but when you take the whole thing and you take all of it all the way around for a congressional district, and then those same people you put in and disenfranchise a whole lot of the people that are the taxpayers, you know, that's a problem.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, well, again, we really appreciate you all coming out tonight and taking time out of your lives to talk to us about all this. We will definitely be taking it all into account as we go across the state, and we just started last night, so we've got another 24 locations or so to hit. But we appreciate you participating so early in the process too, and we'll be adjusting things as we move forward. I'm sorry? We do. There's a list of all the venues. It's in the back of the packet. It's in the, oh, it's in the back of the room, sorry.
And on the website.
There's a whole list, and on the website, so you can see where we're headed next and follow us on the internet. And with that, I appreciate everyone's help tonight, the staff and team here. It's 7:45 p.m., and I declare this hearing adjourned.